Introduction: A Day in the Hundred Acre Wood. I remember waking up to the gentle rays of the sun streaming through the curtains. The day promised adventure, a sort of magic that only the Hundred Acre Wood could offer. I slipped on my slippers and ambled to the door. The sound of birds chirping filled the air, and a light breeze whispered secrets through the trees. As I stepped outside, the enchanting world of Winnie the Pooh awaited me. The smell of fresh pine and blooming flowers was everywhere, making me feel alive and ready for anything. With a soft tune hummed under my breath, I made my way to the heart of the wood. I came across Pooh Bear reclining under his favorite honey tree, his eyes half shut in sheer satisfaction. His honey pot lay beside him, nearly empty. "Good morning, Pooh," I called out. He opened one eye and gave me a slow, honeyed smile. "Good morning," he replied through sticky lips. Just then, I heard a soft buzzing nearby. Following the sound, I found a cluster of bees dancing around a vibrant patch of wildflowers. It seemed like the perfect day for collecting nectar. In the distance, Tigger was already bouncing around, his exuberance infectious. Piglet was carefully organizing acorns, and Eeyore, ever the pessimist, was musing over a thistle. Each character added their own little spice to this fantastic woodland tapestry. I couldn't help but chuckle as Pooh, drawn by the buzzing, wandered over to join me. His curiosity about the bees was evident. "Do you think they'd share some honey with us?" he asked hopefully. And so, our whimsical day began, filled with laughter, honey hunts, and the simple joys that only a place like the Hundred Acre Wood could offer. The bees, as always, were the heartbeat of this magical realm. Their industrious buzz, a constant reminder of the sweet wonders to be found if one only knew where to look. Winnie the Pooh's craving for honey. I'll always recall the delightful tale of Winnie the Pooh and his irresistible love for honey. How can one forget? On one particularly sunny day, Pooh felt his stomach rumble louder than ever. I remember how his nose quivered at the mere thought of honey. And when Pooh craved honey, well, you could bet things were about to get interesting. Pooh set off on an adventure to satiate his craving. I watched him waddle through the 100-acre wood with a determined look on his face. That bear had only one goal: find honey. As he walked, I could almost hear his thoughts. "Oh, bother, I simply must have some honey." He first visited Rabbit's house, a cozy little burrow. Pooh knew Rabbit often had hidden stashes of honey, but Rabbit, oh dear Rabbit, had different ideas. "No honey for you, Pooh," said Rabbit sternly. "Last time you gobbled everything I had." Pooh left Rabbit's house with drooping ears, but even more determination. He wandered deeper into the woods, where he stumbled upon a tall tree buzzing with bees. I saw Pooh's eyes light up like the morning sun as he realized there could be honey inside. Without a second thought, Pooh began climbing the tree. The higher he went, the louder the buzzing grew. Suddenly, a branch cracked, and Pooh tumbled down, landing with a soft thud. Despite the fall, Pooh was unfazed. He sat up, brushed off the leaves, and glanced back at the tree. I knew he wouldn't give up so easily. Pooh came up with a plan. He needed a disguise. He needed a big balloon. Pooh disguised himself as a black rain cloud using mud and slowly floated up with a balloon, hoping to trick the bees. But those clever bees weren't fooled for long. I watched as Pooh tried to reach the honey, but the bees swarmed, causing him to drift away. "Oh, bother," Pooh sighed. "I guess the bees knew I wasn't a cloud." The adventure didn't stop there. Pooh's love for honey was endless, and so were his creative attempts to get it. Whether it was bouncing on Tigger's tail, convincing Piglet to help, or dreaming of honeypots, Pooh's craving for honey was unrelenting and always led to another charming escapade. Meeting Piglet. The plan begins. The sun was barely peeking through the 100-acre wood when I decided it was time to call on my good friend, Piglet. With a bounce in my step, I headed over to his cozy little house nestled under the beech tree. Piglet is always up for an adventure, and I had a buzzing plan that needed his help. As I approached, I could see Piglet puttering about in his garden, tending to his delicate flowers. His tiny figure, with that unmistakable red shirt, always brought a smile to my face. Taking a deep breath, I called out, "Piglet! Piglet!" I exclaimed, waving my arms enthusiastically. Piglet looked up, and spotting me, his face lit up with a shy but genuine smile. "Oh, hello, Pooh," Piglet responded nervously. "What brings you here so early?" I shuffled my feet, trying to contain my excitement. "I've got a plan, Piglet, a honey plan." Piglet's eyes widened, intrigued yet cautious. "A honey plan? What kind of plan, Pooh?" I leaned in close, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "You see, the bees have been guarding their honey fiercely, but I think we can outsmart them. It involves a disguise." Piglet blinked, looking puzzled. "A disguise?" he echoed. Nodding eagerly, I began to explain. "Yes, Piglet. We need to look like bees ourselves. That way they won't suspect a thing when we approach the hive." Piglet hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. "All right, Pooh. I trust you. What do we need for this plan?" Grinning from ear to ear, I listed the items. A big balloon, preferably yellow. Stripes for our disguises. Patience, a lot of it. Piglet scurried inside and quickly gathered the materials. We fashioned makeshift bee outfits using black paint for stripes and attached the yellow balloon to my back. Piglet chuckled nervously, but I could see a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. Now, with our plan set, it was time to head out. The adventure was just beginning, and the sweet promise of honey filled our hearts with hope. Piglet and I, partners in this buzzing escapade, marched briskly towards the hive, ready to put our clever plan into action. The clever idea: borrowing Christopher Robin's balloon. It was a bright morning in the 100-acre wood, and my belly let out a monstrous growl that could wake the sleepiest of bears. "Oh, bother," I mumbled to myself, realizing that my honey pots were emptier than a winter's day. I needed to think of something clever to get some delicious honey from the bee-filled trees. As I waddled through the woods, my beady little eyes caught sight of a bright red balloon floating above Christopher Robin's house. A light bulb flickered on in my bare brain. What if I could use the balloon to float up to the bees' nest? It seemed like the most splendid idea I'd ever had. Without wasting another moment, I lumbered over to Christopher Robin's yard. "Hello, Pooh. What brings you here?" Christopher Robin asked, spotting me eyeing his balloon. "Good morning, Christopher Robin," I replied. "You see, I'm in quite a pickle. I am in need of some honey, and I think your balloon might just be the solution." Christopher Robin chuckled, because he always found my honey adventures amusing. "You want to borrow my balloon to get honey?" "Indeed," I answered, hoping he would see the brilliance in my plan. And sure enough, he did. Once I had the balloon tied securely around my round middle, I began to float upwards. The higher I went, the louder the bees buzzed in my ears. Oh, honey, sweet, golden honey, was so close I could almost taste it. I hovered gently near the hive, careful not to disturb my buzzing friends too much. I gently reached out towards the dripping honeycomb, and victory was nearly in my hands, or paws, rather. This had to be the smartest, most clever idea I had ever had. My heart raced with excitement at the thought of filling my honey pots and my tummy. The preparation. Pooh gets ready for his mini adventure. I can recall it vividly. Winnie the Pooh, as endearing and curious as ever, knew that he had to prepare himself thoroughly before embarking on any adventure, no matter how small. He wandered around his cozy, humble abode, brewing ideas in his fuzzy head and gathering all the necessary items a bear of very little brain might need. First things first, Pooh needed his trusty honey pot. Because after all, what kind of adventure can an energetic bear undertake without a touch of his favorite sticky delight? The golden honey would serve not only as a snack, but also as a potential bargaining chip when negotiating with bees. He nestled it carefully into his small, brown sack. Then came the attire. Pooh took a long look at his reflection in the mirror. His red shirt was perfectly fine for the journey. It was his trademark, after all, and made him feel invincible. Next, he tossed on his sturdy, comfy shoes, just in case the path was rougher than expected. He knew better than to venture out unprepared. The preparation list seemed to grow. Honey pot, an absolute essential. Red shirt, must be comfy and ready for the road. Sturdy shoes, for any unexpected hurdles. Optimism, Pooh made sure to pack a big dose of cheeriness and hope in his heart. Excitement bubbled up in Pooh's chest as he imagined all the fun and unexpected twists awaiting him. Adventure is out there, and I must explore, he proclaimed to the empty room. With each item ticked off, his anticipation grew stronger. Before heading out, Pooh took a deep breath and reminded himself of the plan. This wasn't just another wander through the woods. It was a precise endeavor, an adventure to understand the mischief behind the busy bees' work, and perhaps to snag a little honey along the way. Fully prepared, and with the spark of curiosity lighting up his eyes, Pooh opened the door to the world outside, ready for whatever came next. Up in the air, Pooh's balloon flight. On one particularly sunny day, I found myself standing beside Pooh, marveling at his latest idea. Pooh, with a glint in his eye and a rumbling in his tummy, had hatched a plan to get honey, his favorite snack, from a beehive high up in a tree. His grand plan? A blue balloon. With an air of confident curiosity, Pooh tied the string of the balloon around his wrist and began soaring into the ample, blue skies of the 100-acre wood. Oh, what a sight it was! His chubby little paws clung to the string of the helium balloon, gently bobbing higher and higher until he was face to face with the buzzing beehive. Think, 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 Pooh mused, trying to figure out how to outsmart the clever bees. He needed a clever disguise to be mistaken for a harmless little black rain cloud. Inspired by his own creativity, Pooh had cleverly rolled himself in mud and hummed a happy little tune. From below I watched in anticipation, cheering him on silently. Suddenly, Pooh started singing sweetly to the bees. I'm just a little black rain cloud hovering under the honey tree. I'm only a little black rain cloud. Pay no attention to little me. The bees, though, weren't so easily fooled. They buzzed louder and began to swarm around Pooh. My heart raced as I saw him swatting the air, trying to maintain his composure. One particularly bold bee zipped right up to Pooh and darted around his nose, sniffing out the imposter. It didn't take long for the bees to realize that Pooh was not a black rain cloud, nor a friend. In a flurry of bee wings and Pooh's frantic scrambling, the balloon flew higher, taking Pooh with it. He drifted above the treetops, a vision of bouncy bear and flying balloon against the endless sky. Pooh's balloon flight was an adventure of ups and downs, literally. Watching him chase his honey dreams, I couldn't help but admire his determination and whimsical creativity. The 100-acre wood never lacked excitement, and Pooh's balloon flight proved that even simple ideas could turn into daring escapades. The bees notice, a stir in the hive. I could almost hear the buzzing before I saw it. Padding through the 100-acre wood, I had that funny tingle that something was afoot. Or maybe it was just the rustling leaves. But when I stepped into the clearing near the honeypot tree, that's when I noticed it. A commotion in the hive. First, there was the hum, more intense than usual. The bees, normally so methodical, seemed to be moving with an urgency I hadn't seen before. There were a few key changes. More bees hovering outside. It wasn't just the usual guard bees. There seemed to be twice as many bees buzzing around the entrance. Heightened activity. Inside, the hive was bustling with what looked like a mini bee traffic jam. Worker bees darted in and out, some colliding midair, and others practically buzzing circles around each other. Frantic movements. The queen, who usually stayed deep within the hive, occasionally peeked out as if issuing commands. Curiosity got the better of me. I remembered Winnie the Pooh's penchant for honey and wondered if he had anything to do with this bee ruckus. Last I saw, he was headed in this direction, with a swagger that only a bear in search of honey could muster. I crouched low, inching closer to the hive. Suddenly, out came Pooh, his paws sticky and his face smeared with the golden delight. A few bees buzzed angrily around him, but Pooh just smiled that innocent smile of his, utterly oblivious to the chaos he had stirred. With a chuckle, I watched as Pooh swatted gently at the bees, and then waddled back through the forest, likely seeking out more honeypots. As the hive settled back into a slightly less frantic pattern, I couldn't help but wonder if the bees would forgive Pooh for his little trespass. "Sorry," Pooh muttered to the bees. "I'll just have a smackerel more." And as always with Pooh, a smackerel was never just a smackerel. The rustling leaves behind me signaled that Tigger might be bouncing into the scene any moment, ready to add his own brand of hilarious chaos. But, for now, I enjoyed the gentle hum of the hive, feeling a bit like an invisible storyteller in this tiny, buzzing world. A sticky situation, trouble with the bees. I remember the day quite clearly. It was one of those sunny mornings in the 100-acre wood. I had decided to visit my favorite bear, Winnie the Pooh. Pooh was buzzing around, talking about his latest plan to get honey from the bees. Little did I know, this endeavor would turn into one of the stickiest situations I've ever experienced. Pooh, with his insatiable love for honey, was always trying to find clever ways to get to the golden nectar. This time, he thought that disguising himself as a cloud would trick the bees. Harebrained idea, Pooh's plan was simple, or so he thought. He decided to roll himself in mud to look like a small black cloud. He believed bees wouldn't suspect a thing. Rooftop rain dance. We both climbed up onto a tall hill where the beehive was located, and Pooh began floating on a balloon, humming a little cloud song. He even made some drip-drop noises to pretend it was raining. From my vantage point, it all seemed rather silly. "Pooh, do you really think the bees will be fooled?" I asked, skeptically watching him bob around on that balloon. Suddenly, things took a turn for the worse. The bees weren't fooled. They were furious. They swarmed around Pooh, buzzing louder than I'd ever heard. Pooh tried to make a quick escape, but the balloon started to lose air. Feeling a mix of panic and loyalty, I grabbed a branch and did my best to swat the bees away. But the more I swung, the angrier they got. "Run, Pooh! Run!" I shouted, hoping he could make it to safety. Balloon burst. Just as Pooh began descending, the inevitable happened. The balloon popped. Pooh came crashing down right into some thorny bushes below, covered in honey. To add insult to injury, Pooh had managed to grab some honeycombs on his way down, breaking them open and covering himself in sticky honey. In the end, both Pooh and I had to sprint all the way back to his house to escape the furious bees. We barely made it inside. Both of us were covered in mud and honey, looking quite the spectacle. As I sat there catching my breath, Pooh licked the honey off his paws, completely unfazed. "Well," he said, smiling, "at least I got some honey." And so ended the day. A sticky situation indeed. Piglet's prowess, helping Pooh out. I remember vividly the day Piglet showcased his extraordinary bravery. Pooh had spotted a lovely tree buzzing with the sweet promise of honeycombs. As always, he couldn't resist the allure. Determined to taste the golden nectar, Pooh devised a plan. With a trusty balloon tucked under his arm, the goal was simple: float up and retrieve the honey. But the mischievous bees had other ideas. Pooh soon found himself in a sticky situation, quite literally. He hovered near the hive, swaying from side to side, trying to gather honey without alarming the bees. It was then that I noticed Pooh's predicament and decided to seek Piglet's help. Piglet, always the timid one, was busy arranging his beloved acorns. "Piglet," I called gently, "Pooh is in trouble." Piglet's eyes grew wide with concern, but without hesitation, he followed me. We hurried to the scene, where Pooh was now defensively dodging a swarm of increasingly agitated bees. Piglet took a deep breath and summed up his courage. "Pooh," Piglet squeaked, "I'll distract them. You get to safety." Here's how Piglet helped. Bravery. He faced the bees, clapping his tiny paws to create a diversion. Quick thinking. Piglet picked up a stick. He waved it, disorienting the bees. Teamwork. Pooh and Piglet coordinated seamlessly. Pooh inched down, while Piglet kept the bees at bay. As Pooh descended, a cheeky bee got too close to Piglet. But in that moment, Piglet's loyalty and determination shone brighter than ever. He ducked just in time, remaining steadfast in his mission. Finally, Pooh reached solid ground. The bees, realizing they were tricked, buzzed off. Piglet, panting yet triumphant, received a warm, honey-covered hug from Pooh. That day taught me the meaning of true friendship and valor. It was a reminder that even the smallest of us have boundless valor waiting to be unleashed. Piglet's prowess saved the day, and Pooh had a new appreciation for his devoted friend. Their bond grew stronger in adversity, proving that, with a friend by your side, no obstacle is too vast. The Great Escape, Pooh's return to the ground. I was hanging from the balloon, navigating through the swarm of bees, when I realized that this adventure was far more complicated than I had anticipated. The bees were not amused by my intrusion into their world, and they buzzed around me in circles, clearly safeguarding their precious honey. As the gentle breeze swayed me back and forth, I heard a sudden, alarming pop. The balloon had been punctured. With a slow and steady leak, I started my unexpected descent. I clutched the string tighter as I felt my stomach do a little flip. falling from the sky was never something I had planned in my day. I looked down and saw my friends, Piglet, Rabbit, and Eeyore, all looking up with a mixture of worry and amusement. Rabbit had his gardening hat tipped back, eyes squinting against the sun, while Piglet wrung his tiny hands, clearly anxious about my predicament. Oh, bother, I murmured to myself. The bees seemed to take this as their cue to intensify their efforts. They swarmed closer, and I knew I had to think fast. I scanned the ground for a soft landing spot, my eyes finally settling on Rabbit's garden plot. It was a mess of overturned soil and scattered vegetables, thanks to my earlier antics. Suddenly, Eeyore spoke in his slow, deep voice. "Guess it's time to come down, Pooh." Below me, Owl flew by, hooting encouragement, his wings flapping gracefully. The trees rustled around me as the wind picked up, and I felt lighter, almost as if I were floating, yet still descending at a worrisome pace. Finally, just as the last bit of air left the balloon, I tumbled down into Rabbit's garden with a soft thud. Dirt flew everywhere, and the vegetables rolled around, creating quite a scene. I lay there for a moment, gazing at the sky, the bees dispersing now that I was grounded and no longer a threat to their hive. Piglet darted over, visibly relieved, his tiny feet pattering on the turned earth. "Are you all right, Pooh?" he asked, eyes wide with concern. I nodded, still catching my breath. "I'm all right, Piglet. Just a bit of a bumpy landing." And so, I was back on the ground, amongst my friends, with our mini adventure leading to tales and laughter for many days to come. The aftermath. Tales of the adventure. In the aftermath of our honey-seeking adventure, the 100-acre wood never felt more alive. The bees, initially alarmed by our quest for honey, have since become an unexpected part of our little family. Let me take you through some unforgettable moments that followed our escapade. From that day on, whenever I wandered into the woods, I'd feel a familiar buzzing around my head. It wasn't an annoyance. Rather, it was the warm reminder of our shared adventure. A new friendship. One day, while sitting under my favorite shade tree, a single bee landed on my nose. I didn't flinch. Instead, we shared a silent understanding. These tiny creatures, with their gentle hum, became, strangely enough, friends of a kind. The honey surplus. Pooh, our lovable bear, soon found himself with a honey surplus. The bees, now seeing us as allies rather than threats, were more generous than ever. One could say they became Pooh's unofficial honey suppliers. A lesson in respect. These encounters taught us something invaluable: respect for nature and its small, buzzing wonders. It wasn't about taking, but sharing in harmony. Piglet's garden. Surprise. One sunny morning, Piglet discovered his flower garden blooming more than ever. The bees, it seemed, had decided to help out a friend. His flowers were vibrant, buzzing with life and color. Eeyore's smile. Even Eeyore, our often gloomy companion, found solace in the bees' dull company. The sight of him smiling, with bees circling gently around his patch of thistles, was a sight I'd always treasure. These tales remind me that sometimes the smallest creatures can have the biggest impact on our lives. The bees transformed our understanding of friendship, nature, and adventure, leaving behind memories that buzz softly in the heart. Christopher Robin's wisdom, lessons learned. I remember this one sunny day when I was wandering through the 100-acre wood, and I stumbled upon Christopher Robin sitting under a big oak tree. He had that thoughtful look on his face, the one that always meant he had something important to share. I plopped down next to him, curious to learn whatever wisdom he had. "Pooh," he began, "I've been thinking a lot about the bees. They're always so busy, working together to make the sweetest honey. There's a lot we can learn from them." His words made me think about the little buzzing creatures in a way I never had before. Here are 3 lessons I learned from Christopher Robin about the bees. Teamwork is essential. Christopher Robin explained how bees work together in harmony, each knowing their role and contributing to a common goal. Watching them, I saw how vital it is to support each other, whether gathering nectar or solving problems. Perseverance pays off. He pointed out how bees never give up, tirelessly flying from flower to flower, despite the wind or rain. Their dedication inspired me to keep going, no matter the obstacles, because effort often leads to the sweetest rewards. Pay attention to the small things. Christopher Robin noticed how bees focus on even the tiniest flowers, savoring every bit of nectar they can find. This reminded me to appreciate the little moments in life that might otherwise go unnoticed, finding joy in simple pleasures. As I sat there, soaking in his words, I felt a deeper understanding forming. The bees weren't just creatures. They were tiny teachers flitting around, demonstrating valuable life principles. I left that oak tree with my heart a little lighter and my mind a bit sharper, eager to see the world through the enthusiastic eyes of the bees. Wrap up: the bonds of friendship in the 100-acre wood. In the whimsical realm of the 100-acre wood, I found myself constantly amazed at how the bonds of friendship hold everything together. Take, for instance, the time when Pooh's insatiable love for honey led him on a daring escapade to outwit the bees. Now, anyone who knows Pooh can tell you that his plans rarely go off without a hitch. But that's where the magic happens, when friends step in to help, or, sometimes, to share in the chaos. I recall Pooh's best friend, Piglet, always ready to assist, even if he was a tad afraid of the buzzing bees. It's that very bravery, veiled under layers of uncertainty, that defines true friendship in such an endearing way. Piglet might be small, but his heart is as vast as the 100-acre wood itself. Tigger, ever the boisterous bundle of energy, often enters the scene with his characteristic bounces. Whenever Pooh finds himself in a sticky situation, think honey stuck all over, a single bounce from Tigger can turn the tide. His boundless enthusiasm and ability to find joy in the simplest things show the lighter side of camaraderie. Then there's Eeyore, who, despite his perpetually gloomy demeanor, finds subtle ways to be there for his friends. Whether it's lending a hoof during Pooh's honey quests or merely offering a somber but sincere word of advice, Eeyore provides a grounded perspective that balances the more chaotic elements of the group. Similarly, we can't forget about Rabbit, who, though often exasperated by Pooh's antics, shows a depth of care through his meticulous efforts to keep everyone on track. Rabbit's practicality and attention to detail often prove invaluable in their adventures. Lastly, there's Owl, whose wisdom, though sometimes a bit overblown, provides a reassuring backdrop to their escapades. His anecdotes and guidance often add a layer of depth to their quests, ensuring they learn something even from the silliest of misadventures. Pooh's dependable friends: Piglet, courage in the face of fear; Tigger, joyful energy and optimism; Eeyore, grounded support and practical advice; Rabbit, practicality and care; Owl, wisdom and guidance. Together, these characters demonstrate the remarkable power of friendship. Whether they're chasing after bees, simply sharing a quiet moment, Each friend brings something unique to the table, making the Hundred Acre Wood a tapestry of unwavering bonds and delightful stories.